not going to be 9:30. So that you can breathe a sigh of relief. Good evening, I'm David Horvath. I'm with Louisville Showing Up for Racial Justice, and I'm one of the 9 that we are focusing on tonight. And first of all, I wanted to welcome you to First Unitarian Church. Mary Sue Barnett, who is a Catholic woman priest and who worships here in this space on Sundays, helped us secure the space, and we are very thankful for her for that. As far as logistics, the bathrooms are back there. You walk right by them. So take a break when you need to. The first thing I wanted to mention is it's been a long time since we did this. It seems like a long time. This is where you say, how long is it? How long is it? Well, it's so long that I was trying to remember how we put ourselves together in that lobby, and I was told that it was like a PVC pipe and duct tape.
Yeah, it was.
So I mean, I tried to figure out how we did it, but I don't remember. So
I didn't think about it.
So there you go.
You want me to show you how?
No.
You want to show you?
No, absolutely not.
I don't want to see another PVC pipe real soon. So the other thing today that reminded me of how long it's been is that jury selection happened this afternoon down at the courthouse. And there were 40 people in the room, potential jurors, and the attorneys were their job was to try to figure out who was going to be good jurors and who might not be as good. But the surprising thing is that out of 40 people in the room, only 2 people knew anything at all about this action. Only 2 people, which, I mean, people watch a lot of TV. So they don't even watch TV when they're watching TV. You get a chunk for a while. But it basically brought home to us how important it is that we bring this issue back to the forefront. The reason that we did what we did and we are getting what we got is because of the day that we did this action was the day that President Trump's administration was supposed to release and bring together the children that had been separated. And so we were focusing on that day. We have gotten worse since then. If anything, it's gotten worse. And so tonight and tomorrow's activities and the trial over the next couple of days gives us an opportunity to bring this back home. So again, thank you for being here. We'll have someone to introduce, Roy Bourgeois, who was so gracious to to be with us for this event. He has a lot of experience with this sort of thing, and I think you'll find his remarks very timely. And his work with the School of the Americas in Fort Benning, Georgia, as well as the border militarization work that he continues to do with the School of the Americas Watch is something that's pretty amazing. So before we get into the program, I wanted to introduce a local musician who was so kind to agree to play tonight with us for this event. Chadwick Wild is a singer, songwriter, and poet of Louisville. A member of Quiet Hollers, the band, who's played here many times, and in fact all over the world. So I want to introduce Chadwick, who's gonna serenade us for a little.
So I'm going to play for you guys an old protest song from the 40s that I wrote some lyrics to on the way over here. A little more reflective of maybe what's going on right now. And I'm going to ask that we all sing the chorus together because our voices together are always stronger than just one voice.
Woo!
Yeah. It goes like this. Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Which side are you on now? Which side are you on? That's right. Come all you good workers, good news to you I'll tell about the good old Union that's coming here to dwell. Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Which side are you on now? Which side are you on? They say in Franklin County the capital's for sale, and all their politicians are praying that we fail. Which side are you on? 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 Oh, sisters, can you stand it? Oh, tell me how you can. They mean to have a woman's rights decided by a man. Which side are you on? 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 Oh, well, which verse are we on now? Okay. My brothers and sisters, every color, every creed, it's one earth that we're sharing and one air that we breathe. So, which side are you on? Which side are you on? Which side are you on now? Which side are you on? Now one more time. Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Which side are you on now? Which side are you on? That's beautiful.
Thank you, Shannon. I wanted to first, before we go on with the program, I wanted to introduce the nine that are mostly here today. They're in the front row. Can you all stand up? We have Carly Wallace, Sonia DeVries, Clara Ann Rutlinger, Bob Iden, Courtney Tierney, Rebecca Bernstein, Don Cooley, Kelly McCall, and me. Thank you all. I also want to give some other thanks. In fact, I'm going to ask Carla to do this because one of the big supports that we had was from our legal team. Carla has the names of those attorneys that have worked with us from that day. Carla, you want to just expose them in public?
Yes, we want to appreciate them because these are the times when everybody needs to do something from the space they're in, and these attorneys stepped up. Courtney Kellner, Ted Schaus, Larry Simon, Dan Cannon, Andy Downey, and pulled together by then attorney, now judge Annie O'Connell.
It was a huge help and a big privilege for us, actually, in that sense of the term. We were privileged to basically be able to walk into the jail situation knowing we had a judge candidate and lawyers ready to help with the legal part. And that was the hardest part for me personally, was leaving that place and realizing that most of the people there were not going to leave that night. They were not going to walk. They were going to be there for 6 months or a year or 2 years because they could not lawyer up as we did. So, it was a huge gift to us to have those folks working. I also want to give a shout out to the organizations that really made this possible, the organization that inspired and supported and continue to help us move towards this action. Gente of Louisville and Black Lives Matter Louisville were the two organizations. You may remember a little thing called Camp Compassion this summer. It's just a little thing. That was just the starting act for what was to become a series of events which made the summer of 2018 one to remember and to savor for us in terms of our actions together. And we're real lucky tonight to have Sasa Rivera.
All right.
Thank you, David. What a year, guys. As David said, my name is Sasa Rivera. I am a core member of Mi Gente Louisville, which is a chapter of a national organization of Latinx political organizing. And as we know, this issue and the reason why we came was specifically to stand in solidarity with immigrants, with many of them being Central Americans, such as myself as a Central American immigrant, to fight this fight. And I look back at a year and it's been mind-blowing. A year ago, I probably didn't recognize most of the people sitting in front of me who then risked their, risked their future, risked their present, and risked everything for the sake of people who are like me. And I'm so honored that you chose to become the Heyburn 9, to stop immigration court, and to stop those who are now have the pleasure of accompanying through a case manager position to continue on in their immigration fight. And a lot of people say that last summer was the summer of Abolish ICE. Abolish ICE is here year-round, and it's going to continue staying here until we see the demolishment of this situation. And Heyburn 9 did an amazing thing to have true solidarity, true being an accomplice to be in solidarity with the immigrant community, but there is so much still to be done. And there's so much that continues to happen. As we speak, probably there's a family at the Greyhound station, there's a family who was cramped up in an apartment of one with 8 other people who have newly arrived in a new city, a new culture, with absolutely nothing to their name except for the people who they hold dear to their hearts, trying to find some reason out of it, some rhyme, as well as a future. And that is so difficult. And many people don't understand what that looks like, to not know the language, to not know what is against you, but also understanding there are so many more issues against you. At Camp Compasión, we had the ability of being face-to-face in front of the ICE Center to see those who are going in to essentially sign their life away, either outside of this country or them to be on the run. And we were able to accompany them as interpreters, but also to offer food and water, and from there birth and knew that that was not enough, that we were angry, and that we will continue to stay angry, and that's what created the Heyburn 9. And I'm very honored to say that some people on the Heyburn 9 are some of my best friends. I would give my life to make sure that they were okay, because I know they would do the same for me, and I'm so honored.
I didn't know you were getting out there to make us cry.
And Mi Gente still stands in solidarity with the Heyburn 9, and we will until this battle is won, until every single battle is won, until the defunding and the dismantling every single prison, border, imperialistic standard here in the United States, but also internationally. We stand in solidarity with all those movements. So tonight, as you hold that in of the terror that our immigrant siblings are facing, please remember that this fight will never be over until every single battle has won. And tonight and tomorrow we'll stand in solidarity with Heyburn 9, and tomorrow we'll stand with the next fight. And I thank you for being honored to accompany you in that space.
Thank you, Sasa. If the Heyburn 9 was the icing on the cake really was Camp Compasión. 19 days? Right?
17.
Who's counting? 18? 18 and a half?
It was a long time.
It was a cauldron. It was a cauldron. It was a learning cauldron for all of us that participated. And the people that were there day in and day out really did an amazing thing, and a show just what community can be in terms of our work together. So it was awesome. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Corey Lockhart, who's going to introduce Roy. So Corey is no stranger to any of us, and Corey has a really a good connection with the School of the Americas. She was, for multiple years, she was one of the wonderful musicians who sang from the stage in front of the gates of Fort Benning, and did this amazing litany every year, and it was the glue that kept us all together. And so, Corey, please.
So I have the distinct pleasure to introduce Roy Bourgeois. Roy grew up in a conservative working class family in Louisiana. He joined the Navy and served in Vietnam, and in Vietnam his eyes were opened to realities that changed his life. He came back to the United States and worked with poor communities in Chicago and returned, and I need to actually look at the page I've got here. Sorry, Roy. His focus turned to peacemaking. He became ordained as a Maryknoll priest and served poor communities in Bolivia, and he was actually deported from Bolivia for speaking out against human rights violations there. When he came back, then he worked with poor communities in Chicago, and his work returned to Latin American solidarity work when 4 church women were killed in El Salvador and Archbishop Oscar Romero was assassinated. Discovering links between the School of the Americas and Fort Benning, Georgia, and numerous egregious human rights violations in Latin America, he founded the School of the Americas Watch, with the aim to uncover those truths, with the aim to close the school. It was renamed later the Western Hemisphere Institute for Security Cooperation, and continued and continues to have its graduates carry out egregious human rights violations. For many, many years, as David said, many of us gathered outside the gates of Fort Benning, Georgia, both to remember and honor those who were killed by its graduates and to demand that the school be closed. That work continues, and as David has also said, the work of focusing on militarization along the border is also a great focus of the School of the Americas Watch. Bourgeois has spent 4 years in jail speaking out against injustices and was excommunicated from the Catholic Church for standing up for women's ordination. He is no stranger to civil disobedience. He is no stranger to speaking out for what he believes and taking the consequences for doing so. And while the church may have excommunicated him, I can say as a Catholic, as a person of faith, that you continue to be a model of what faith in action truly looks like. And so with that, let us welcome Roy Bourgeois.
I was asked to use this mic. My voice is not too strong. Is this okay?
Yes.
If not, I'll go to the other. But I just want to say it's a joy to be back in Louisville. When I got the call from Bob Iden to come and speak here for a couple of days, he informed me about the Heyburn 9. And I wanted to know when the trial would be, when the court dates would be. And when he mentioned that, I said I would like to be here for that. And it's a special honor to be here with the Heyburn 9. 6 went to trial today. Tomorrow we have Courtney, Sonia, and Bob who will be going to trial. They go Thursday and Friday, maybe Monday, but I hope that you could be there with us. I don't know what is more important than working for solidarity. That all-important word, solidaridad, that I first heard about in Bolivia years later. But growing up, we're all products, as we know, of our background, where we're born and raised, our friends, family, good folks, a lot of love there, but so often it's like that Buddhist monk told me in Vietnam, our greatest enemy in life is often ignorance. We're cut off from other people's suffering, how they're feeling about being oppressed and discriminated against. It's not our experience. And it's amazing how, in a sense, insensitive, ignorant, and cruel we can be in our journey. But fortunately, there's hope. We do meet people, and it's a great blessing, I think, when we meet people and have experiences that really begin to change us, that awaken something in us, that introduces us to that word solidarity. and we start hearing the cry of others. The cry for justice, the cry for equality, the cry for peace, life. My ticket out of Louisiana was the military when I graduated from college down there with a degree in geology. Our leaders were saying that we had to go off to Vietnam to fight those godless communists. And I never questioned our leaders, church leaders, or government leaders, and I volunteered. I became a naval officer. I thought of making the military a career. Explored the world, 2 years aboard ship. Got an assignment to Athens, Greece for a year. Got to see a lot of Europe. And then when they asked for volunteers to go off to Vietnam for shore duty, I signed up. I thought the cause was noble. It was that ignorance at work. We knew nothing about Vietnam, its people, its history, its religion. So much older than our own. And for me and so many who went to that war and experienced the madness of it all, the violence, the death, losing friends, getting wounded there, something happened. I began to change. There was, not overnight, but there was the beginning of an awakening. And helping me to see the injustice of it all was this old Catholic priest from Canada who went to Vietnam years ago as a young man. He was caring for about 300 children at this orphanage near our base. And my buddies would go there to help this old priest. He was overworked. The kids were struggling for survival, about 300 of them. All of their parents had been killed in the war. They were killed by our bombs and by our bullets. And for the first time, I began to see my presence, our presence in the war there through the eyes, the beauty, the innocence of these wonderful children. And it was just the beginning. And as my year came to an end, was drawing to an end, I realized I went to Vietnam thinking I wanted to make the military a career. And it was a way to move up that ladder. Go off to war. And I realized I could no longer stay in the military. And I wanted to do somehow what this priest was doing. He was a peacemaker, the first peacemaker I ever met. He was a healer, a healer. I'd never met a healer like that before. He was connecting to the suffering of others. And so I came back and I entered this. I inquired about different orders, wrote off letters, and this Army chaplain recommended I join the Marino Order. And I said, Mary who? I'd never heard of them before. Headquartered in New York, and they serve the poor, the poorest of the poor in Asia, Africa, Latin America. I said, that's it. I'm going to apply. I was accepted. Came home a couple of months later. My year was over. And when that plane left Vietnam, many of us, we wept. We wept. We were alive. It was a new beginning. There was a glimmer of hope. In what war does, so many of us have learned, it not only kills others, but it kills our hope and our joy. I had so much hope and joy when I went to Vietnam. It was shattered. It was broken. But coming back home, there was a glimmer of hope. And after a wonderful visit in Louisiana with family and friends, I entered the Marino community. Good 6 years. Rediscovering hope and some joy. Almost 6 years preparing to be a priest and serve the poor. And when I was ordained, I was assigned to our mission work in Bolivia, where a slum on the outskirts of La Paz, Bolivia, became my home for the next 5 years. And it was here, I have to confess, the first stop was language school. to learn Spanish, and I was the worst student ever to go through that school. When I spoke Spanish, they thought I was speaking some indigenous language. But really, they in the barrio during those 5 years, the poor, they became my teachers. Bolivia was under a brutal dictator, General Hugo Banzer, who came into power through a violent coup. And it angered me. It saddened me to see my country, the United States, giving lots of military aid and training to that military there, keeping them in power, exploiting the poor, protecting our U.S. economic interests. That's what it was all about. We were living off of the blood and sweat of the poor. And I had to make a decision. Am I going to be your traditional priest and just baptize babies and marry people and have funerals? No, that didn't last too long. I was invited by the poor to be a part of their struggle. It was they who first introduced to me that all-important word that you lived out when you, February 9, went before that immigration building and said, "Not in my name. Or are you going to treat our migrant sisters and brothers this way?" At the very core of that action was love, solidaridad. And they taught me it wasn't complicated. It was really simply making the struggle of others your struggle. Trying to connect your life, that often is much safer, much better, to others who are really struggling, who are not being treated with equality and justice. And there are many ways to express that. And it was an invitation, as you had an invitation. And you said yes to that. And it took me a while. It wasn't only until I became more and more involved, going to their meetings, going before our U.S. Embassy in La Paz to proceed not in our name, and being put on the list. And it was during my 5th year. Actually, what got me in trouble before that was I went to Washington, D.C., working with our human rights group there, Bolivians, and had, as a priest, access to the prison there for the political prisoners where they were torturing men and women and men. And as their representative, having a U.S. passport, they asked me to go to Washington, which I did, to talk with members of Congress about what our country was doing in Bolivia. We were torturing people there. It was being done in our name, with our tax money. And shortly after coming back from Washington, I was reported, not quite sure who, somebody did, called in and was threatened. If I did not keep quiet, I would be expelled. I could not be silenced. And just months later, I was among a large group arrested, coming out of a meeting. And I had a U.S. passport and was expelled. And I was lucky. Friends who were Bolivians, some were killed, they were tortured. They had to flee their country for their lives and weren't able to come back to be with their loved ones. I was lucky. And when I came home, I tried to get back. Wouldn't be given a visa, so I had to move on. I had to let go. But shortly after coming back from Bolivia, El Salvador, we read all about it in our paper's front page. They assassinated a well-known bishop there, Archbishop Oscar Romero, in this little country, El Salvador. 5 million people. He was a different bishop. Most bishops, as we know, are politicians. They're not voices of the poor. They're voices of dictators often, like in El Salvador. And Bishop Romero was different. He had a good heart. And he started speaking out. He said, "I'm a bishop, in the Catholic Church. I have a voice. I have power. My people are powerless, they're voiceless. I must speak for them. And as a result, he was assassinated while saying Mass. It was the day before he was killed that he made a special plea to the military to stop the killing, to lay down their weapons, and obey that higher law that says, thou shalt not kill. Just months after he was assassinated, 4 church women from our country, 3 nuns and a Catholic lay worker, who went at Bishop Romero's invitation to serve the poor, they were raped and killed by the military. 2 of them were Maryknoll's sisters, Mara Clark and Ida Ford, who were good friends of ours. When that happened to the 4 church women, it shook us. It brought El Salvador closer to home. That's the way it is, I guess. It's more personal. We knew somebody killed, raped. It stirs up this anger. We had to go there to find out what the hell's going on. And when we went there, we found something we had never seen before. I was more frightened there than Vietnam at times. I've never seen such people who are so powerless, who were treated so badly, who just didn't have anyone to go to, no police, to protect them. Their loved ones killed, disappeared. They couldn't go to anyone or they would be killed. Their loved ones assassinated in the street. They couldn't approach them. They would be arrested. And when we heard their stories, so many of them, their personal stories, each one a horror story, we said, we got to do something here. And when we returned, our delegations returned back to the U.S. from El Salvador, we realized that we couldn't go about business as usual. And then, not long after coming back from our delegation, our time in El Salvador, we read in the New York Times, 525 Salvadoran soldiers had arrived at Fort Benning, Georgia, in our backyard, to start training in the art of killing. How to use the M16. This is a combat school. They're military coming here to be trained by us to go back to El Salvador to kill even more people. And when I read that, I got on the phone, called Maryknoll headquarters in New York and said, I was stationed at the time in Chicago. Loved Chicago. I had 2 good friends there who were so much really activists. And I said, I've got to go to Fort Benning. And got their support. There was no problem, no problem. And went there, I started calling friends. And we went down and started organizing in Columbus, Georgia, home of Fort Benning. And there was Linda Ventimiglia, who joined our group. Had just left Fort Benning. I just left after doing her 3 years of duty there. Came from a military family. She joined our group. Larry Rosebaum from Chicago, who had worked in Brazil as a priest. He was now in the U.S. He came down. And local people. And we started just holding up banners in front of Fort Benning. Stop the killing in El Salvador. Salvadorans go back home. And after a couple of weeks of that and giving a few talks as Catholic priests in a few churches who would welcome us, most didn't want to hear it. It was a big military town there. But we decided it was time to act, to cross the line. And Larry, Linda, and I decided, with the support of our bigger community, to go on to Fort Benning at night, dressed as high-ranking Army officers. And we had with us the last sermon of Bishop Romero that friends had sent us from El Salvador. His last sermon he gave in the cathedral the day before he was assassinated. He said to the military again, Stop the killing. Stop oppressing your campesino brothers and sisters, and obey this higher law, a law of God that says thou shalt not kill. And we did some practice runs in the pines in Alabama nearby, and we with this big boom box testing the sound system. So we penetrated the high security area that night, right near the barracks where there's 525 soldiers from El Salvador were housed. And we waited. And with the last, we scaled this tall pine with the boom box, Romero's last sermon. And when the last lights went out, we just said, Bishop Romero, this is for you, brother. And his voice boomed into the barracks. We saw this as a very, very sacred moment. They didn't quite see it that way. And they came out of the barracks, the trainers with the M16s, those German shepherds, and the light spotting was in the tree. And they ordered us down, or they were going to shoot us down. It was time to come down. And but we left the boombox up there with Bishop Romero's message repeated a number of times. Stop the killing, lay down your weapons. Their work is over. Stripped us down, work is over. Brought in the FBI. And they saw that as serious. They brought us to the county jail, and we awaited our trial. We refused to be bailed out. And when the trial came, we had to go before this judge, who was a well-known segregationist judge, Robert Elliott, who became known as Maximum Bob. At that trial, the charges were serious. We were looking at a few years. Impersonating officers, criminal trespassing, and a couple of others. And my parents, my siblings, some friends from Louisiana came to the trial. And Linda's parents were very upset. Her father was retired military. Larry was in good shape. He came from a more progressive family. But that's something I think we all have to do with when we start crossing lines and living out the word solidarity. Especially we here in the U.S., I think. A lot of what we do, or experiences we have, our loved ones, parents, siblings, close friends, don't have the same experience. And I was very concerned about, not because of our love for each other, we don't want to upset other people. And it was a turning point, really. I had to think about that. I talked with my brother about it, and he said, you're gonna hurt Dad, you're gonna hurt Mom and Dad. They won't be able to handle you going to prison, man. And he also said, you're a priest, can't you be baptizing more babies? No, it doesn't work that way. All I could say, and perhaps others have said the same thing, we've got to be true to ourselves. To thy own self be true. We've got to follow our conscience. We've got to live out our lives rooted in our experiences, and we love other people, and especially parents, siblings, but we cannot allow them to live our lives. We've got to live it. And I thought about that, what a sad thing if I ended my life after hopefully many years and I look back and said I wasn't true to what I believed in. Can't go back and change it. So it was a good discernment experience. And my folks came, parents, siblings, and there's others, me and my co-defendants, Larry and Linda, and they handled it okay. We went to prison for 1.5 years, and prison was hard. We went to different prisons, but we realized something important. When we went to prison, they could not silence us. The great peacemakers, Dr. King, Martin Luther King, Dorothy Day, and others, and they all said the same thing. You know, you can't silence us. You can't silence the truth. And when we went to prison, we had access to the media. Lots of media interviews. Wow, I asked friends, send me the top, you know, the biggest 50 newspapers in the U.S. Like the New York Times, Washington Post. You got a lot of time in prison. And we wrote letters to editors. Wow. And when you write a letter from prison, it's not like writing a letter from home or from your job. They do pay attention, and I got to tell you, when Larry, Linda, and I got our letters published in the New York Times, the Washington Post, Newsweek, the LA Times, the Boston Globe, and the list went on and on, there was this joy, you know. You are not going to silence us. And one other thing about prison, I mean, to be honest, it was one of the best retreats I've ever made. No regrets, no regrets. And Larry, Linda, and I got out of prison. That year and a half went by fast. Some hard times, but even loved ones, like I never forget when my mom visited me in prison with my family. She said, "Why aren't there more Catholic priests here because of protesting?" But anyways, it was a good experience. We got out of prison and went back to work. We couldn't stop that military aid to El Salvador. It increased to $1 million a day. And that ignorance was always at work, like the Buddhist monk said. Ignorance, our greatest enemy. A lot of people did not know anything about El Salvador. But they learned shortly after we got out of prison, the U.S. Army School of the Americas that had been around for years, but operating in Panama, trained all of these soldiers from 20 countries in Latin America, was kicked out of Panama very quietly and settled where? At Fort Benning, Georgia. And it was the U.S. Army School of the Americas, now in our backyard. I was now assigned to Marino's work in Minnesota, beautiful Minnesota. I loved it there. But once again, I got on the phone, called the headquarters. I've got to go back to Fort Benning. There's another school there, the School of the Americas. And once again, I went down, found this little apartment right outside of the main gate of Fort Benning. And look out the window, welcome to Fort Benning. I said, this is a good place to live, right here. And college, lots of friends. Kathy Kelly came in from Chicago. Many of you know Kathy. And a Jesuit priest came in from Boston. 3 Salvadorans who were good friends in Minnesota, who had to leave their countries with their threats, joined us, our little group. Charlie Lickey added a lot to the group. Charlie was a Vietnam veteran, got the Medal of Honor in Vietnam. And with that Medal of Honor comes a lot of respect in the military, and we were before a military base here. And our action wasn't complicated. After a 3-month retreat, we decided to have a water-only fast. No food, no coffee, I miss that, no coffee, no juices, no beans and rice, water. And we took it a day at a time. It was another, as Gandhi said, it's a good way to expose an injustice. Hunger strike, fast. Others have done that. And we wanted to learn from them about that being a way of expressing solidarity. And we started a day at a time. And our bodies grew weak. It's the toughest thing I've ever been through, really. And we lost about 1 pound a day. You get weak, but we supported each other. And we put the word out from 5 to 6 in the afternoon. We invite people to come and be with us. Bring some music, uplift the spirit, bring a poem. And we built a community there. And they came, at first a couple, and then 5, 10, 100 people. First thing you know, we had 100, 200 people there. in each afternoon supporting, but calling attention to the School of the Americas, calling for its closure. Our fast ended after 35 days, and our bodies were very weak, but the spirit was strong. Food never tasted so good. And it's amazing how you bounce back so fast. And we went back to work, and we realized we had work to do, a lot of work. And some of us were able to stay and start doing research, investigating the School of the Americas. And what we found was very serious. Very serious. This was a school of assassins. This school that had already trained, while in Panama over 50,000 soldiers, now at Fort Benning was training about between 2,000 and 3,000 a year in combat. And what we learned also from the United Nations and investigating they did, that there were these torture manuals there that were being taught these military people how to torture, how to get information from the poor, those who are resisting. We put the word out, we knew enough, this was a school of assassins. We had something to do here, we had to stop it. We put the word out, come down to Fort Benning in November. Let's gather here in the name of solidarity. And let's express our love and solidarity with our sisters and brothers of these countries whose soldiers are here training with our tax money. And we started with a small group. Really, we had 10 of us on the fast, and then 100 came, and then 500, 1,000, 5,000, 10,000, 20,000, and I've met quite a few came from Kentucky, from Louisville. And as you know, it was just a big celebration of hope, in a sense. We gathered from all over the country, young and old. Lots of nuns at the beginning, college students, Vietnam veterans and Iraqi vets came. The United Auto Workers, a lot of union people joined our struggle. And retirees, parents came with their kids. And I thought about that. What a wonderful way to teach our children about peace, about solidarity when they're so young. And it brought us great joy. And as you know, those of you who have been there, we have workshops, we have musicians, we fill up the hotels. At first they didn't like, they said, protesters go home, and we had a few hundred people. Then when we started pumping millions of dollars into the community, welcome peacemakers. We did feel really, they were very welcoming to us. But that Sunday was special. Sunday, a solemn funeral procession. We always said we've got to come together and keep alive the memories of our sisters and brothers in these countries. Today our migrants who are being killed, and back then others who are being killed in their countries by these soldiers we're training. And on that Sunday it was very solemn. Many people would bring there, it became a tradition to bring the photos of the victims. White crosses, thousands of white crosses with the names, the well-known victims like Romero, the 6 Jesuits who were killed in El Salvador, young mother Elba and Selena, her 16-year-old daughter. That really got the movement really energized when members of Congress went there to investigate and reported that those who killed the Jesuits and the two women, the mother and her daughter, were trained at the School of the Americas. And the list went on. They killed Bishop Romero, they raped and killed the churchwomen, and the list went on and on. We knew enough. But during that solemn funeral procession, the names are called out individually with their ages. And everyone, the thousands there, presente, this person is with us. We're touching on the sacred here, I think. The sacred. And many of us weep. We get to the fence. We put our crosses in that fence, kneel, prayer, silent prayer. The procession takes about 3 hours. There's so many people. It's become a tradition. It started years ago at the very beginning. There were people who felt called, as you felt called to do that action in front of that immigration office. We got to do something. And when we gathered at Fort Benning, people just discerned we got to do something. We are going to cross that line. We're going on to Fort Benning. We're going to cut a hole through that fence. We're going to climb over it or go around it. We're going to take that photo of the victim or the cross with his or her name, and we're going to bring it to the School of the Americas down the road. And they let it be known, if we cross that line and go on to Fort Benning, we are breaking the law. And we are trespassing, and you will get, not maybe, you will get 6 months. And you're going to have to come to court before you go to prison. And a lot of people discerned, and they did not stop them from, and people who had jobs. And others who, it was a real struggle to do that, but they felt that strongly about the action as you did. And I'm happy to say that as we look back, over 250 of our people over the years have crossed the line. Quite a few nuns, college students, senior citizens, United Auto Workers, others. And I have to say this, whenever they arrested us, we called ourselves, and they somehow coined the name, the POCs, Prisoners of Conscience. Whenever we went to trial before Maximum Bob, we knew what we were getting, 6 months. And whenever he sent us to prison, wow, we had to go to court, a lot of press. And then we went to prison, wow, a lot of press from prison. And when old Maximum Bob retired a few years ago, I wrote him a letter. I said, "Dear Judge Maximum Bob, I want to thank you. I want to wish you," I didn't want to be too mean. I said, "I want to wish you well in your retirement. And I want to thank you on behalf of our School of the Americas Watch for helping our movement grow. Because every time you sent us to prison, it brought more people the next year. You have not yet learned that you cannot silence the truth. The truth cannot be silenced. Thank you for helping us." And I didn't get a return. I didn't. But let me just say, what happened was, I've got just a couple more minutes. What happened was, we realized there was a connection between this school and what was causing so many thousands of our migrant sisters and brothers to flee. The militarism, the violence that they were exposed to through all those years of School of the Americas soldiers there. And of course the gangs, and very connected to U.S. economic policies, the policies that we implement that cause people to live in poverty, how we exploit them. Our large corporations exploit them, and how these soldiers, their role is to protect. They provide the muscle for U.S. foreign policy in all of these Latin American countries. And we made a decision after a lot of discernment, after 25 years at the main gate, after a lot of discernment, our staff, the council members, and the movement decided to go to the border. So 4 years ago, we went to the U.S.-Mexico border, Nogales, Arizona, and which is more difficult to get to. It's a lot more walking, a lot more energy, a lot more expenses involved. And we've been there for 3 years. And we will continue to go there next year, but this year is the 30th anniversary of the massacre of the 6 Jesuit priests, this November the 16th, which is a Saturday. And with them, the young mother and her daughter, that really brought many to see what this school was about. And we've made a decision now for this year to go back at Fort Benning. It's going to be a scale down. We're not going to have the 10, 20,000, but we do hope to see some of the old-timers from Louisville and other parts. I was just in Denver, Colorado, and students from Denver at the university there will be coming down. And a lot of them, we just started to get the word out. Check your calendar, November the 16th and 17th. That weekend, we're going to be back. It's going to be like a big reunion coming home. All of our POC is going to be there. It's been 25 years that we've been there, and we've lost a lot of our people in the struggle. They passed on. We're going to remember them in a special way, too. But let me just say in closing, I was totally focused on closing that school. That was our goal. And I started a few years ago being pulled aside after this, addressing this injustice of U.S. foreign policy in Latin America. A number of devout Catholic women in the church said, we've got to talk. And they said to me, I think you should be addressing an issue closer to home in your church, in our church. As a woman like you, I feel called to the priesthood. But since, because of my gender, I'm rejected. And there's that church teaching that says only men, baptized men, can be ordained. At the same time, the Catholic Church, like most faith traditions, teach that we are created equal, men and women. Everyone is created equal, of equal worth and dignity. There are no exceptions. But there's a big exception. And what bothered me was not the heavy theology, it was something very basic. As a male, as a man, I was in a profession. Today, we're not talking about the Middle Ages, today. I'm in a profession that women cannot apply for. Women need not apply. You're not qualified because of your gender. And I realized there came a point I realized I had to speak out. And so wherever I spoke about the School of the Americas, I said I've got to speak just for a few moments about this, the injustice closer to home in the Catholic Church. And it didn't take long to get calls from the headquarters that I was poking the beehive, that beehive of patriarchy. And then Lexington, Kentucky got me in trouble. I received an invitation from one of the many women priests who are being ordained. They're not waiting any longer. They're being ordained. And Janice Sever-Jasinski in Lexington was one of our prisoners of conscience, one of the many who crossed the line and served prison for 6 months. And she invited me to her ordination in Lexington. And I wrote back and said it would be an honor, an honor. At the same time, I knew this could be a little serious, maybe more serious than going to prison or being kicked out of a country. I always got support from my community for being kicked out of Bolivia, and then later El Salvador, and later Honduras. Spending 4 years in prison, no problem. when I requested a big budget of $60,000 to produce School of Assassins, a documentary about the School of the Americas, they came through, no questions. We got Susan Sarandon to narrate our documentary, School of Assassins, and got us an Oscar nomination. Wow, it educated so many more people. But when it came to the issue of women priests, a big problem. And I simply said, I cannot be silent. And wherever I went, I spoke out about this issue and attended Janice's ordination in Lexington. It was a very joyful occasion. Hundreds from our movement and so many came to celebrate her call, her service to what she said was the church and the poor. The Vatican didn't share our joy. I got a letter. It didn't take long to get a letter from the Vatican saying that I had 30 days to recant my public support for the ordination of women, or I would be expelled from the priesthood. And I thought about it and couldn't do it. It was not possible. I simply wrote back and said, what you're asking me would violate my conscience, would be a lie. It would go against everything I believe. And I said one other thing, when you bring up this word scandal, when a lot of Catholics hear the word scandal, they do not think about the ordination of women. Most Catholics, the New York Times recent poll and Gallup showed that 75% of Catholics support the ordination of women. What they think about is the thousands of priests in the United States alone. Over 5,000 Catholic priests have raped and sexually abused over 10,000 children. That was back then. That number has increased since then with the Pennsylvania report and a lot of the reports coming out now. I felt I had to be honest and say that. And it took a while for them to expel me. When the official letter came from Pope Benedict, the Vatican, just months before Pope Francis came in, I got the letter that I was expelled, dismissed, excommunicated, some said. It hurt. I had never experienced that kind of rejection before, that kind of hurt or disappointment. But I must say, looking back, it's, like many of us have gone through, we're no strangers to struggle. But I did underestimate the sexism and the misogyny in my church and in society. I could not get one priest to support me publicly. There was no problem with them visiting me, supporting us. If they saw you out, they would come. Large numbers of them would come, no problem. But on that issue, let me just say what I've come to is this issue of power as the root cause of this sexism and this all-male priesthood. And it starts in the seminary. Over the years, we as Catholic priests become addicted to power. Addicted to power. And we don't even know it, or we will deny it, of course. And we see, without a doubt, women as a threat to that power. But it's over. It's over, really. If the Catholic Church does not change, or any other faith communities does not change in its any teaching that would discriminate, it will go the way of the dinosaurs. And right now, there's a real shortage of vocations. Young people will not have much to do with the Catholic Church or any church that would have teachings that would discriminate against women and our LGBT sisters and brothers. And I'm hopeful, but that hope is not coming from fellow priests, good longtime friends for so many years. And just in closing, it is coming from others, especially younger people, who are not addicted to power, who are really offended by inequality, and who aren't being introduced to the word solidaridad. And in closing, let me just say our experiences, and this has been the experience here. I look back, there are no regrets for going off to prison for the nonviolent protests, and there are no regrets for being expelled from the priesthood. It gave me a glimpse. This experience gave me a glimpse of what millions of people, millions every day, go through. Because on a much deeper level, I want to make that clear, on a much deeper level, because of their race, because of their gender, and because of their sexual orientation and identity. And the struggle goes on, and I'm looking for hope. And I find hope from you on the first row and the other rows. But thank you very much.
And for giving us some hope to carry on and keep doing what we're doing here. But, appreciate it. And Roy's going to take some questions for a few minutes, but first, the basket. So we're going to pass the basket around. It's going to go in a couple directions. One, we're going to do a donation for First Unitarian for hosting us this evening. Second, there are some expenses still involved with the court cases, and that money is going to be used for that, and what money we don't use for that is going to go to the organizations that we've been working with. And thirdly, we're going to try to cover Roy's expenses to get here. So here, I'll pass them around a couple of ways. If you want to make out a big old fat check, it should be KITLAC, KITLAC, Kentucky Interfaith Task Force on Latin America. But we'll also take $100 bills and $20. So anybody want to ask Roy a few questions tonight?
Yeah, questions, comments that you might have. I have a lot of critics. I welcome a few more.
Hi, I'm Jim Johnson, forward radio 106.5 FM, Louisville, Kentucky. Here's my question. The historian David Garrett, Congress, the CIA in Guatemala, Richard Zimmerman, the CIA in Guatemala, Foreign Policy of Intervention, many others, secret history of the CIA, classified accounts of its operations in Guatemala, and Cleveland, killing control, U.S. military and CIA intervention since World War II. These are the historians that document the connection between the American CIA and the counterinsurgency that took out the democratically elected Guatemalan president Jacob Arbenez in a military coup in 1954. This counterinsurgency morphed into the Guatemalan military with the installation of military dictators. The counterinsurgency was organized, trained, funded, equipped, and supported by the American CIA. Trained in the School of the Americas in Georgia, trained in the School of the Americas in Panama City, Panama. The counterinsurgency that later became the Guatemalan military was every bit as brutal as ISIS. The military coup that removed Arbenez from power and reestablished a military dictatorship touched off a civil war that lasted 36 years and took the lives of 132,000 Guatemalan citizens, and that's a conservative estimate. The Guatemalan Commission for Historical Clarification and the Recovery of Historical Memory, authored by Bishop Juan Cordero and sponsored by the Catholic Church, states 93% of those who lost their lives in the Guatemalan Civil War were murdered by the counterinsurgency and the Guatemalan military. So my question, Roy Bourgeois.
I was just about to ask for that question.
Why is it that very few Americans know about this tragedy. This tragedy, much of this tragedy rests on the shoulders of the American CIA and the Schools of America. I don't even know about this.
No, that's a very good question. I mean, what you read too not only applies to Guatemala. I mean, when I was in Bolivia there, right next door was Chile, Augusto Pinochet, the thousands killed there, the dirty war fought by the generals in Argentina at that time too, all supported by the thugs throughout Central America. Today it's Honduras. Today we're trying to we're very concerned about Venezuela. In fact, friends have occupied the Venezuelan embassy in support of basically their message, U.S. hands off of Venezuela. We're very concerned. And it's very serious because they're trying to starve out the occupants of the Venezuelan embassy. They've cut off the lights, the electricity. They were able to get food into the folks occupying that to show solidarity with the people there. But it's very tense right now. Jesse Jackson is going to be speaking there tomorrow. There's going to be a big gathering in front of the Venezuelan embassy. But I just keep coming back to that Buddhist monk and what he said. I mean, I went to his country years ago, and because of that experience, I came home. And it was after I became a priest. I went back to Vietnam, and my first stop was the Pentagon. I went to the Pentagon to return this Purple Heart. It was a matter of just wanting to just correct a wrong. It's not possible, but just to sort of purify one's heart, maybe. I don't know, to just let go of mistakes. And then I went to Vietnam alone, which was a mistake. I tried to get a few friends, they just couldn't make it. But I spent a month, went to Hanoi, and then got on the bus, went to Saigon, Ho Chi Minh City, and I had with me a letter, just a letter from the heart. I said, I came to your country as a young man, believing my leaders that we had to go to war here, and I'm here to apologize for all the suffering and death, destruction that we caused you, your families, your country. For years I've asked God's forgiveness. I'm here to ask yours. And I was humbled. I was humbled by the responses. They said, you came here, you didn't know anything about us. And you believed people, they didn't use the word ignorance, but that you just didn't know. But there was that Buddhist monk during that trip I met that we had a lot. He said, we've got to talk. And we went into his monastery there and talked, and he just really explained to me that whole issue of ignorance. How so often in life, it's our enemy, our greatest enemy. And I don't know how to break down that ignorance. And he said something else. Our weapon must be wisdom. Wisdom. How? How do we get that wisdom? I know so many of people, they don't know what's going on today in these countries, so many countries, including Guatemala. Now, what we discovered, there's so many places we can go to as a symbol to learn and to make a statement. Embassies that we've gone to throughout Latin America to protest, it was a symbol of U.S. foreign policy, representing so much suffering and death of their people. But the School of the Americas, early on, we began to realize that going to Fort Benning and put our feet in front of Fort Benning and calling attention to the School of the Americas was a way we can educate. It was a connection we could make. We couldn't, so many of us couldn't go to these countries, El Salvador and other countries, but we can come here, their soldiers are here. And a lot of people were not going to come from around and go to the immigration office there. But that, in a sense, was a symbol. And we could call attention to ICE. And what we are doing through our foreign policy there, it can be like a teachable moment. And that became, again, a place to put our feet. And right now the challenge is to look for those places where we can put our feet, especially today, as you did here. And look for maybe return and go to other places that are symbols of our foreign policy. I've gone to another embassy, I should say, with about 300 people, many of them women priests. It's called the Vatican Embassy in Washington, D.C. And it was such a good experience going before the Vatican Embassy on Massachusetts Avenue, which again is the symbol of so much oppression and discrimination through the church teachings. It was such a good experience to be protesting out there with all these women. I went back whenever I go to meetings in Washington. I would spend some extra days alone. And I just go there by myself. And it helps me deal with my anger and hope. And I carry 2 signs in front of the Vatican Embassy. They've got to know me quite well there. One sign says, ordain women. And the other banner says, God created us all equal, gay and straight. And I'm amazed at how much response we get from people, there's a red light there in Massachusetts, people walking. And wherever we go, we should have a flyer. I give them a flyer about the Catholic Church's teachings that discriminate. And it's always, 99% of the time, a thumbs up. So maybe the lesson might be, where do we get the wisdom? Challenge. And where do we put our feet, those symbols that can educate ourselves and others? Please.
Anybody else? Another question we'll take?
Yeah, please.
I was with you in Fort Benning 20 years ago. I still remember it like it was yesterday. It's
All
so
right.
inspiring. I'm
You
sure
were there when we were there. Yeah. Do you remember us?
You had darker hair back then. And I had hair back then. But I'm sitting here thinking about patriotism.
Yeah.
Give us a different conceptualization of patriotism in this country that is so cruel and unjust. How do we be patriots?
I remember using that word, patriotism, and going to Vietnam. I said I was a patriotic young. I used to say that. I was taught to be patriotic in our little town by our church leaders and our government leaders. That word was very big. I don't know if it's used today, but I still hear it a lot. And I used to hear, I'm going to Vietnam to express my patriotism, my love of country. I love country. But then something happened. I started reflecting on that word, patriotism. I remember doing retreats in the seminary and in my work too. How do we love a country in the abstract? How do we love an object? How do we love a book? It's inanimate, it's an object. I want to talk about love when it comes to people. Countries are made of people. We might say we love a country, but how can we say we love a country when we're causing so much death and suffering? But again, it's language. that because of our lack of education, I carry around with me. That comes to mind actually because I think about it so often. I came across this quote not long ago by a historian. Will Durant, a historian who died some years ago, but a well-known historian, American historian, put it this way: education is a progressive discovery of our own ignorance. Education is a progressive discovery of our ignorance, our own. And there are no shortcuts. And I think the biggest challenge is, where do we get that education? Where do we get that wisdom? And I do believe it can come more rapidly if we take risk, if we cross lines, if we allow ourselves to sort of intuit some risk of the experience of others, especially sisters and brothers who are really being discriminated against and made to suffer because of our domestic or foreign policies and our government agencies. And I would just say, when we do these actions, I think it can help educate others. At first there's anger, I've seen that. Friends and family members were very angry because how can you do this? Aren't you patriotic? Don't you love your country? But today it's different. It just took them a while to think, to allow themselves to reflect. And that's why I want, maybe in closing, I want to put in a plug for silence and peace. I'm an activist. It's at the very core. I mean, like many of you, we're activists. But I do need a lot of solitude. I find solitude very important in my own life as an activist. And it helps me to deal with this issue of anger. When we first started going to Fort Benning, I have to tell you, I don't know if you've experienced that here in your own activism, but many of us went there with a lot of anger. A lot of anger to know what we were doing. We saw it. We talked to so many of the victims, survivors in El Salvador. Coming back from Bolivia, I came back with a lot of anger. And I realized that anger can really dominate me. And I was called out, actually, when I came back from Bolivia and El Salvador a few times. I spoke on a lot of university campuses. And I'm grateful to these university professors and a few students who got me aside and said to me, you got to do something with that anger. It's intimidating, it's dominating you, and how true it was. And so wherever I speak, I often speak about holding on to hope and joy, not letting the anger. Yes, how can we not be angry? And that anger brings us to that, to your action and our actions. But let us not let it destroy us. Because we've got to just hold on to hope. Sometimes, especially today, we've never been in a way more challenged with the leaders of our country, and there's so much division today, even in our own families. Wow, it's challenging. But let's try as best we can. And what I have found, though, good walks in nature, being alone sometimes, just being quiet, be still, and let us help ourselves kind of hold on to that hope and joy. But let me just stop here in closing. On the table here, I did bring this booklet from Silence, My Journey from Silence to Solidarity, a lot more about the SOA and the women's issue. And also this book, we had a showing last night, and I know some of you are back again, but Pink Smoke Over the Vatican. It's about the women's ordination movement. And I know many of the women, and they are the voices, the vanguard of the movement. And I've sent a copy to every Catholic bishop in the U.S. Only 7 responded. I've invited them to come to the showings often around the country. Not one has come. A few priests have come, but they come sort of, with sort of sunglasses on, sitting in the back. They're a little scared. But at the Vatican Embassy, they've got a number of copies. But that's over there. It's a great gift for a Catholic priest or a bishop. At last, I encourage as activists the power of the pen. I've written so many letters to editors and op-eds, but this was an op-ed I sent off to Newsweek not long ago, and it got published. And I always feel good when it's published. It's not easy to get it published. It's out there. Take a copy, share it with others. But again, I just wish you well. I'll be here tomorrow for the trial, but I have to go back to Georgia on Friday. But just know that. My only regret is I wish I could have been with you at the action. But anyways, keep up the good work, and I'll be in close touch. Thank you.
Thanks again, Roy. So his merch table is right over here, and I've been asked to sort of talk about what's next in terms of the next couple of days. Tomorrow morning at 8:30 on the steps of the courthouse at 6th and Jefferson, we're going to have a press event where all of us are going to gather and make our unified statement for the press that we will then, send out to everyone. And then the trial itself begins at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So if you can come to both, that would be great. But the trial starts at 1 o'clock tomorrow, and it will probably go into Friday, and hopefully not past that.
Please fill the courtroom if we can. That would be great. I know the time changed, but we would really appreciate people being there still.
So let's ask Chadwick to close us out. Is that okay? Thank you. And thank you all for being here. It means a lot to all of us.
So this is a song that my mom, Sonia, asked me to play. She's one of the Heyburn 9. And this is a song that I wrote during the 2016 election.